The Nets have the option to play Blake Griffin. The problem? He's shooting an ugly 32% from the field. If you're shooting that low, you just can't play. Hey everybody, it's Yaron Weitzman. This is the Starting Five. This week we are talking about the Brooklyn Nets, who not surprisingly are off to a strong start. But if you watch closely, you'll see there's still some areas where they could use some improvement. Here are 5 things the Nets need to fix in order to reach the NBA Finals. Number 1, get Kevin Durant some help. Here's the good news for the Nets. Kevin Durant has firmly established himself as the best player in the NBA. The numbers he is putting up this season are ridiculous. A league high 28.6 points per game. He's shooting an insane 54% from the field. He's also playing 35.8 minutes per game. That's the 7th highest number in the league and the most he's played in a season since 2015-2016. That's when he had 2 healthy Achilles. Now he's 33 years old. He has 1 Achilles that was operated on, and yet he's being leaned on more than ever before in his career. Is this something that the Nets are concerned about? On Tuesday, before their game against the Knicks, I asked Steve Nash this very question.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal to have him, have such a burden, but I don't know what options we have other than to play him less and lose more.
And that night, Nash was proven prophetic. Durant played 41 minutes against the Knicks. He scored 27 points, dished out 8 assists, and guarded Julius Randle, which included lots of banging in the post. And the Nets needed all of that just to hold on to a 2-point win. After the game, I asked Durant whether he was concerned about playing all these minutes.
If I can convince coach to play me the whole second half sometimes or put me in earlier in quarters, I'm going to do it every game. It don't matter, So my basketball life is not that long, so I want to get the most out of it.
There's no doubting that. The question is, can Durant keep this up for the rest of the season and still have some gas left in the tank for a playoff run? Number 2, improve their depth. Before trading for James Harden last season, the Nets had a decision to make. Did they want to go about building a team around a big 2 and a roster full of guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, and Karis LeVert? Or do they want to sacrifice that depth and have a big 3? We know the decision they made, and it's probably the right move. Nobody could have planned for Kyrie missing this season due to not being vaccinated. Here's the problem, though. Right now, the Nets have a different sort of team. They have a big 2 with no depth. If you look at their box score some night, it's pretty hilarious to see not only the names of the guys that Steve Nash is playing, but how many minutes he's playing his stars. This is why guys like KD and James Harden are being worn down. Not all of this is the Nets' fault. Joe Harris being out for 2 months after undergoing ankle surgery hurts. Nick Claxton missing 15 games due to an undisclosed non-COVID illness is something the Nets could not have prevented, and it robbed them of some much-needed rim protection and young legs. Add those 2 to the rotation, along with a scorching red-hot Patty Mills, and you have the makings of something. But the Nets did make some mistakes. They relied too much on old guys, Blake Griffin types, LaMarcus Aldridge, Paul Millsap, and didn't bring in enough wings. This is why Durant has to spend so much time hounding the opposing number 1 option. DeAndre Bembry has shown flashes, and Nick Claxton should return to the court sometime soon, but it's still clear that Steve Nash doesn't trust much of his rotation. In order to go deep into the playoffs and make a finals run, the Nets are going to have to find some sort of fix there. Number 3, find a 2-way big. The Nets are basically relying on LaMarcus Aldridge as their lone big man right now. And for good reason. He's been red hot from mid-range and from deep this season. The problem is he can't move anymore. It's not his fault. He's just old and doesn't have the agility to hang with guards. Watch the Nets play the Warriors or the Suns, and you'll see opposing point guards repeatedly drag Aldridge into pick and rolls, pull him onto the perimeter, and dust him or pull up for jumpers over him. The Nets have the option to play Blake Griffin, who has actually been good defensively this year, even leading the league in charges, which provides a form of rim protection. The problem? He's shooting an ugly 32% from the field, and no matter how good he is on defense, or how adept he is, and how smart a player he is on offense, and how good his passing is, if you're shooting that low, you just can't play. Which leaves the Nets right now stuck. They either have a guy like Aldridge, who's all offense and no defense, or a guy like Griffin, who's all defense or no offense. You can get away with that in the regular season, but in the playoffs, opponents are going to pick that apart. Number 4, James Harden needs to stop overthinking. After the Nets lost to the Suns Saturday night, where Harden shot just 4 of 15 from the field, though he did dish out 14 assists, Harden was asked how he approaches the balance between scoring and setting up his teammates. "I'm just trying to figure it out," he said. But you can tell he's still trying to navigate how to approach playing on an offense where not every single thing revolves around him the way it did in Houston. Steve Nash summarized it well this week.
Well, I always want James to attack. I want him to attack and put pressure on the defense. If it ends in a shot more times than not, great. If it ends in a pass more times than not, that's great too. So for me, I don't want to necessarily pigeonhole him into you have to score, you have to play make. I want him to be aggressive, be himself, and make plays.
Harden's numbers will be there by the end of the season, and despite all the hoopla about him adjusting to the new rules, he's still getting to the free throw line about 7 times a night. The problem is you can tell he's still thinking out there, and he's still unsure of how to attack. Maybe now that he's finally healthy, after spending an entire offseason recovering from a hamstring strain, that will change. But his mentality on offense and how he attacks opposing defenses is definitely something that bears watching. Number 5, tighten up against the top teams. Yeah, the Nets are 15-6, but all 6 of their losses have come against teams over 500. They're only 4-6 when playing those teams. And here's the problem for the Nets. The East is absolutely loaded. The Bucks look like a juggernaut, having won 7 in a row, with Giannis looking even better and the addition of Grayson Allen adding some punch to their offense. The Heat look great. The Sixers have been up and down, but when Joel Embiid plays, they're fantastic, and maybe, just maybe, there's a trade coming down the line. All of these are teams that can give the Nets fits. None of this means that the Nets are doomed if they face them in the playoffs. But I think it's fair to say that if you're a Nets fan, you're probably less confident now than you were a few months ago. That's your starting 5. Be sure to keep your eyes peeled here for more great NBA content.